Hi, my name is Paige. Welcome to my channel, and if you are a returning visitor, welcome back. It feels almost surreal to be back at my desk again after it seems like forever. These past couple weeks have been really crazy for me. If you are new here, then you don't know this, but I have just gone back to school to get my certification to teach secondary English, aka middle school and high school English, and so these past couple weeks have been me going to school and getting used to that. Today we are going to go over all the books that I read in August. So, can you guess how many books I read in August? I'll give you a hint. I did finish 4 books in June. So I'm coming to you today with 4 books I read during July. Yeah, I read 4 books in August. Seems to be a trend here, but hey, I read something. So without further ado, let's get into it. So the first book I finished in August was The Scorpio Races by Maggie Stiefvater. If you have seen the first sentence challenge that I did with my friend Emily, you can find it in the link here, then you will know that I lost, and so I was challenged to read The Scorpio Races, which was a long time ago, like 2 months ago, and I finally got to finish it this month. This is a young adult kind of contemporary fantasy. The reason why I say kind of contemporary is because the setting is very fantastical and almost ageless, but you can tell that it's more modern. It's just that the setting makes it a little bit antiquated. Basically, this book is dual perspective. It follows a girl named Puck and a boy named Sean, and they're both participating in the annual Scorpio races on their island. So in this fantasy world that Maggie Stiefvater has set up, water horses exist. Notice how I just kind of conveniently avoided the actual term for them because it's difficult for me to pronounce. But basically, it's a sort of creature that's based off of folklore. I'm not quite sure. I think it's definitely European folklore about water horses that emerge from the sea and all that kind of stuff. But basically, the people on this island where Puck and Sean live, they have these horse races every year where they like tame the horses from the sea and like race them, obviously. So it's about Sean and Puck's family issues and Sean and his like independency, and also it's kind of a romance, so it, you know, I think you can make the connection there. I gave this 5 stars. I immensely enjoyed it. I don't know why it took me so long to finish because it was really good. Although I will say that like the last quarter of it was what made me really realize how much I loved it. It wasn't until some relationships and dynamics were really like built up on that I started to really love the book, even though I loved the setting and the concept from the very beginning. So very glad I got to read this book, although I am very sad that it's not a series. So okay, next up we have a Stephen King book. This is the first Stephen King book that I've ever finished. I have gotten like halfway through The Stand, but I never got to finish it. I will one day, but yeah. So I read The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon. This was a completely random read, to be honest. I went to the library sale at my local library. You can find that video in the link here. And I found a kind of beat up paperback version of this book. I had heard people talk about it before, and being that it was so short, I felt like maybe it would be the first book that I could feasibly finish by Stephen King, because all of his books really intimidate me because of how long they are, which they shouldn't because I've read super long fantasy books, but this book is a horror thriller fiction novel, which is pretty typical of Stephen King, but it follows a 9-year-old girl named Trisha who goes on like a field trip with her older brother and her recently divorced mother, and they go hiking, and she kind of steps off the trail to do her business and ends up getting lost in the woods. The reason why it's called The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon is because she's a really big fan of the Boston Red Sox, and so she has a Walkman with her that she carries with her as she's spending this time in the forest, and she listens to the Red Sox games and obviously her biggest idol, which is Tom Gordon. So that's kind of what comforts her in this like dark time. But there's also this like entity in the forest that is like kind of following her, or what she perceives to be following her. So the book is a very compact I think I would call it a mystery novel, because the mystery is like, what is this thing, and is it anything? Is she imagining it all? Like, what is going on, and will she survive this trip through the forest? So from reading this book, I can confidently say that I do like his writing style, so I think I'll be continuing on maybe to read it next, because I'm going to see it chapter 2 tonight actually. I'm very excited about that, and I'd be really interested to see the difference or similarities between the movies and the book. Okay, the next one is another book that I got from my library haul. Completely random. I said that in the haul about how random it was that I even picked it up, but I ended up getting really curious about it after I finished Tom Gordon, and I think I was like in a weird mood to like read small paperbacks. You ever get in a mood to like read a certain type of book, not even having to do with genre, but just like how they look and feel? That's how I ended up feeling, so I ended up reading Dead Girls Are Easy by Terri Garey. I found out after filming that haul video that I did a couple weeks ago that it's actually a woman. Sorry, I referred to her as a guy. I've just known both guy and girl Terri, so I wasn't sure which one she was. But it's a urban fantasy, paranormal, romance, all that kind of stuff, so it kind of actually gave me vibes similar to the Anita Blake series and just all of those like kind of paranormal, you know, urban fantasy kind of stuff. So the protagonist of this book, it's actually a series of books, is Nikki Styx, as in the river, and she has a life-changing, life-threatening experience which allows her to suddenly see ghosts. So off the bat, not an entirely original premise, but that like doesn't really matter to me because I'm not worried about whether you're being completely original as long as you're not copying off of somebody. So I wasn't worried about that when I picked it up, and it wasn't a concern as I was reading it either because it was original in its own way. But basically Nikki has to kind of come to terms with this new ability that she has, and while she's doing that, things actually get more complicated because a friend of hers actually sells her soul to the devil, so she has to deal with that because it directly affects her. There's also a very prominent romance component of this book, having to do with this like doctor that saves her life. It's what it's supposed to be. It's kind of a cheesy supernatural urban fantasy novel, and I think I didn't completely expect that from it. I thought it was going to be more like, I don't know what I expected, but it wasn't really what I got. I enjoyed it for what it was, but it was, I think I only gave it like 3 stars, and that's because it was kind of repetitive. If I was going to read an urban fantasy, I wouldn't pick this one up again, or I probably wouldn't continue the series. I think that the romance could have been really good, but there were just a couple things involved with that kind of ruined it for me. But I will say that I didn't find Nikki to be extremely whiny as far as protagonists go, which was surprising considering that for a lot of these sort of books the protagonist is usually kind of unbearable. That's why I was able to get through quite a few of the Anita Blake books, because even though she's a little bit frustrating sometimes, it's not because she's ignorant most of the time. So I didn't feel that way about Nikki either. I thought she was actually pretty solid. It's just that a lot of the situations were repeated and there just wasn't enough conflict, I think, in my opinion. I think it was pretty funny though, so if you're interested in reading kind of a short little book like this for its comedy and its ghostliness, then feel free to give it a shot. So I actually forgot that I read this book and I just skipped right over it when I started this video, but it was actually the first book I finished in August, and it was Between Shades of Grey by Ruta Sepetys. This was a book that I kind of exclusively listened to on audiobook, and off the bat I can tell you that I wouldn't really recommend the audiobook. It was just what I had from my library and I liked the book enough that I just carried on. This is a young adult historical fiction set during World War II. I said a couple of wrap-ups ago that I'm hoping to read a little bit more historical fiction, and so I saw this at my library and I just thought, you know what, let's do it. I've heard of this author before and I've heard good things, so I figured this would be a good place to start. It follows a 15-year-old girl named Lena who lives in Lithuania with her family, and she is a very accomplished and talented artist, and one day her life is completely uprooted by the Soviets when they start imprisoning different minorities and people who they suspect are communicating and trying to evacuate people out of the situation that happened with Stalin. All of that stuff, that's where this book is set, and so it follows Lena throughout her having to leave her hometown and being basically ushered off to all these new places and all of the heartbreak and trauma that is involved with that. I did really like the novel overall. I think I gave it 4 stars, and the reason why I didn't give it 5 is because I think there were some parts that were carried on for too long. One of the things I really liked about Night by Elie Wiesel, even though it's nonfiction, I really liked it because it was very compact and it only gave you what was most impactful, if you know what I mean. But I think Between Shades of Grey could have done with it just a little bit of cutting. But with that being said, it was overall a very good historical fiction. Definitely a very emotional read, but the ending was definitely very like it made you see everything in like kind of a new light, if that makes sense. I'm not really sure how to word it, but yeah, overall I did really enjoy this book. I'm glad that I read it. I would be curious to read her Salt to the Sea because I think that's actually more popular than this book. I'm not sure why. I haven't really heard much about why, but if you have read Salt to the Sea, then let me know if you like it, and if you are like an historical fiction buff, then let me know how that compares to other historical fictions that you've read, because I would like to read more historical fiction, but I definitely want to be reading the stuff that is like the best, because right now I'm kind of dipping my toes into the genre and I want to get the best content. Anyway, so that was 4 books that I read in August, the only 4 books I read in August. I actually did finish The Name of the Wind just today, and I was so sad that I couldn't finish it in time to film it with this wrap up, because we'll talk about that next month. Or maybe before. I'm not sure if I want to do like a full-scale review of it. I don't usually do those sort of videos, but I'm not sure if you would like to see that or not, so let me know. Like I said last week, I'm not sure what my uploading schedule is going to be, but I'm just gonna upload videos whenever I can until I figure out like the most sensible and just overall easiest way to upload these videos and film them and just everything. So that schedule is still in progress, but you can still expect to see at least 1 video from me a week, hopefully 2. I'm going to film another one over the weekend, so I know that for sure. So yeah, I will see you over the weekend. Hope you had a great week. Yeah.